Hey, what's up, Rejects? Thank you so much for pushing play on this next episode. But before we begin, I got to talk about Next Rung. Next Rung and its co-founder, Blake Stinnett, are doing so many amazing things for the fire service community and first responders all across the country. They exist to make an impact in the lives of firefighters and first responders. They provide quality resources that will help combat mental health issues that plague our profession. And if you're listening to this, you probably have an idea of what I'm talking about. And when I say resources, I don't mean EAP or counselors with no relatability of what we actually go through. These are people that are on the front lines, or they're actually trained to deal with the calls and the mental health problems that we have on a day-to-day basis. From peer support, counseling, and professional treatment against addiction, they are just one text away. If you can text support, counseling, or treatment, whatever you need, to 833-698-7864, or email info@nextrung.org. Please get the resources that you need. You don't have to struggle in silence. Contact Next Rung today. Now let's get to the show.
We were sitting there talking about tactics and that company officer level stuff. And at some point, the deputy chief, kind of brought it up, and he's like, this is what we're doing. We're moving to a truck culture. You can either fit in or fuck off. And if you don't like it, you can go to an engine. That's it.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Relentless Rejects Podcast. I have a hard time saying it myself, so I can't imagine people being able to say it so easily. Relentless Rejects Podcast, episode 51, straight back from FDIC. What an amazing experience that was. Chip did not get a chance to go, but he's going to probably explain why. But yes, my guest this week is my friend from the Midwest, Chip Ashford. Chip, how are you doing today, sir?
Great, bud. I'm doing good. Ready to go.
Is Missouri technically Midwest?
Yes, it is the Midwest.
Because ever since
smack in the middle.
Since Mizzou,
we're in St. Louis, it's the gateway to the West.
Oh, okay, all right. See, because I think of Mizzou, and then when you guys joined the SEC, it completely jacked my brain up. I'm like, are you guys in the South?
For sure.
No. No, it's great. I go out to Kansas City all the time, and when you're not wearing Chiefs gear, you guys are wearing all your other sports gear. You're very proud of your sports out there in Missouri. Which I'll tip my hat to.
The Cardinals. I mean, we don't talk about football here much anymore. Everybody's on the Chiefs bandwagon now since the Rams left.
Yeah, well, the Chiefs have been winning so much that they've actually become the villains of the NFL. You know what I mean? Yes, like the Patriots for a long time were a team worth following, and everybody liked it. And then Tom Brady just kept winning, and everybody's like, I hate the Patriots now. I'm tired of seeing them win.
It's like hate the Yankees, right?
Right, absolutely, man. Well, thank you so much for getting on the podcast and spending your time with me. I know your time is valuable. So let's just jump right into it. Everybody knows we kick off the podcast with family first. So here is your opportunity to give a shout out or bash any family members you want to acknowledge in this moment.
Yeah, no. So I'm a father of 4. I had 3 girls and a boy. They're all older. My son graduates high school this year. He is the up and coming next generation. He's already in an Explorer program in the fire service, and will be the next fireman in the group. I have been told by my 3rd daughter that she would pay me a lot of money if I told everyone she's my favorite daughter. So that was they were trying to negotiate who I would say is my favorite. So, but no, yeah, father of 4. It's busy. My one daughter's still playing college soccer. She graduates in a year. They're all doing good. As I joke, they're all contributing members of society. So I guess I did something good. None of them are in trouble or in jail or pregnant. So we're ready to go.
Man, yeah, hats off to you. My 19-month-old, I'm already starting to think about that. And it's like looking 19 years down the road, like how poor of a job am I going to do to where she's on a pole somewhere? I'm dreading it already. And I imagine a lot of fathers with daughters have that thought.
Oh yeah, no. We went through a lot. I mean, they're good kids. Their personalities have definitely come out. So they're doing good.
All right. Well, I'm probably going to praise other people than you because I've had a drink with you here and there, and I don't know. Like I'm going to question who their mentors are.
It's not all me.
Nice. Well, let's talk about you for a bit. You've already kind of gave it away that your son is next in line to carry the torch for the firefighter family name. You are second generation firefighter, correct?
Yes, yeah. My dad retired as a captain with 25 years here in Illinois. Retired. They moved to Florida, and unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. But that's been one of those things in the back of my mind, right? Him growing up in the years of no masks, and it was okay to smoke cigarettes in the fire still, right? Do an overhaul and light a cigarette up and do what they do. And obviously his longevity was not as good. Unfortunately, they moved down there and he worked for a long time, still just doing odd jobs until he was 67. They retired, and he falls into that conversation we've always had that he retired and 6 months later he had a heart attack and died. Right? And so never really got to enjoy retirement and do all those things. So, you and I have talked about that, the mental health side of it and the physical part of it, and just taking care of ourselves better. I learned a lot from him through that. So, but yeah, he was a huge mentor to me, and he was a paid fireman for a department, but also was a volunteer. So, I started as a volunteer on the department that he was on, and kind of just grew up in the firehouse. That's all I really remember is growing up in the firehouse and going with the guys and them busting my balls, and that I kind of went into the firehouse with that's how it was gonna be. So that's one of those cultural talks that we have too.
Yeah, you benefited from understanding what the firehouse life is before technically like diving headfirst into the fire service. Where I feel bad for the kids. We got a kid that was homeschooled basically his entire childhood, and now he's working in the firehouse, working in the fire service, and he's having a little hard time.
I bet
fitting in with the crowd a little.
I bet
we're a bunch of jackasses to him. It's rough.
No, and we've got some. I mean, it's just different now, right? And we've got a couple of kids that are going through that too. Not necessarily homeschooled, but they still live at home with mom, and they're an only child, didn't really grow up around guys, and so how do you fit in to the frat house?
Yeah,
firehouse is. Right?
Yeah, it pretty much is, and I've said that though. Like we struggle with that mentality of being a professional organization that dedicates our life to the citizens. But then also when we're at the house, we like shenanigans and pranks and fart jokes. It's a weird balance. Inside the firehouse we're a certain way, and then as soon as we go out those doors, it's like whoop, complete 180 change.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a skill. It's a skill that a lot of people don't appreciate.
That's right.
How long have you been in the fire service?
So this will be 32 years. Yeah, 32. Started when I was 17, roughly 17. I started as a volunteer. Did a couple of years. Actually took my first job at 21 down a small department south of Kansas City in Raymore, Missouri. I think I started at about $26,000 a year. And, it's a slow, small district, just to get my foot in the door. I tested everywhere from Chicago to Kansas City to whatever, trying to get into the fire service. And had done some time. I started, at 18, I started working on the ambulance in East St. Louis just to get my, start getting experience and do what I could do. And then St. Louis City called, so I came back home and worked for St. Louis City for about 10 years and migrated like a lot of us do out to the county, which is a whole deeper dive subject, but started working for St. Charles City 17 years ago, got promoted to captain about 11 years ago, I guess. And, just trying to do my time now.
Nice.
Stay focused.
I'm gonna give you a mission for the rest of this podcast, and I know it's gonna be really hard. When you're tapping the desk, you're shaking the camera, and people can hear the tapping.
Keep my hands off the desk.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I was gonna try to let it go, but you're knocking it out of the park with consistency on that one. No, it's cool. I mean, so the St. Louis area, it's a pretty boring area. Nothing ever happens out there.
No.
So I mean, you don't have a ton of experience. So No.
Yeah, I spent well, let's see, I spent 3 years in East St. Louis, which if you know anything, if you ever watched National Lampoon's Vacation, you've seen the videos of East St. Louis, right? And then spent all of my time in North St. Louis, St. Louis City, which is essentially the ghetto area of the city. So yeah, it was fun. We had a great time. It was hard to leave. I had a great crew with a phenomenal captain and a senior man that I learned a lot from. And, but as I joke with everyone, you go there to feed your ego and you leave to feed your family.
Ah,
Right. So at some point you got to, especially with 4 kids, I had to do the right thing and make sure I had provided a better life for them.
yeah. And I know we're going to dive into the mental health of stuff, but when you're just getting racked day in and day out, and you just kind of maybe need a mental break a little bit.
Yeah, well, my kids were small too, and it was rough at times. Of like, I would literally, we worked 24s. We worked at, one day on, one day off, one day on, one day off,
Oof.
4 days off. And I would come home, we'd get up 6, 7, 8 times in the middle of the night, a fire in the middle of the night. I mean, we averaged a fire a day, right? So it didn't matter if it happened at 2 or 4, and that's an average, right? And come home, and then my wife, who I'm divorced now, but my wife at the time, we'd kind of high five at the front door, and she'd go to work, and I'd have a 2-year-old and a newborn to manage for the rest of the day. Yeah, and so there were many a days, one in the baby carriage and put gates up to keep the 2-year-old in the room, and I'd lay on the floor and sleep. Just
That is a struggle that I feel not a lot of other families experience. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, the wife and I did that for a while. We only had one, but it was the high five at the door. I'm home from work. Now you're going to work, and yeah, and then you're just trying to keep this thing alive while you're smoked. I mean, we run 48-96, but I've had some bad 48s where I'm coming home and I'm like, I can't see straight, and then you still got to be dad. That is definitely a struggle. And but on the other end of it, right? Like for us, when we're on a 48, or even when you're gone for 24, and you have the spouse that has to work and still manage the household, and they always do it better than we do for some reason. Sure. My wife can do 100 things, and I can get maybe 3 or 4 things done.
Right.
And she likes to remind me, and I'm a dude. I can't figure it out. I can't multitask. My attention span doesn't really last very long. It's definitely a struggle for sure. Do you have much of a support system out there? Did you?
Yeah, well, yes and no. More guys at the firehouse and just having close friends. And, my daughter was 2 when my parents moved to Florida. So I kind of lost that, and obviously until the divorce part of it, my ex-wife's family was all here, which was good. But once that happened, I was kind of on my own other than the guys and friends and, which, I mean, fortunately we have a great culture and a great group of guys. The kids now, like, like my daughter's 21st, just turned 20. My second daughter just turned 21. And when we went out for her birthday, it was the guys at the firehouse coming out to hang out with her. You know what I mean? So that's just how they've all grown up around those people. Versus,
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. You got
family.
Yeah, man. Speaking about culture, so you and I met, was it last year, a little more than a year ago, at LCC Fire School in Parsons, Kansas. I was just a student, but I was invited to the instructor dinner because my buddy Adam Haywood, he was out there teaching, and he's from Adams County, and we just kind of carpooled over there. So I was able to come to the dinner, and I was talking to you about your lecture, and you were telling me a little bit about what you were teaching on. It was a lot about fire service and firehouse culture. And I really, really wanted to sit in that class. But Corley Moore was also there teaching his 9Ls, and that took all day long. And I never got to sit through that. So I sat through that. But but now that I have you, I'd love to pick your brain on what that presentation is all about.
Yeah, for sure. So, my battalion chief, actually, Aaron Burlingame, wrote a paper for his bachelor's degree called Death of the Fire Service, How We're Losing Our Firehouse Culture, right? And he got into a deep dive, and it originally started as like, Is it the younger generation's fault? What are we losing? All of this stuff. His son is 19 and is in the fire academy, or he's getting ready to graduate the fire academy next week. Obviously, my son coming up the way it is, we kind of ended up just talking about it and got into a deep dive with them. Like at 18 and 19 years old, what are you looking for in the fire service? And what matters to you? Is it the money? Is it the culture? Is it, you know what I mean? Like what's drawing you to it? Uh, and we took that paper and essentially made a class out of it, right? And created our own thing. And using their knowledge, those kids, like what is really important to them, and realizing that they really didn't care about how much money they were going to make. Hadn't even thought about that yet. They hadn't thought about pensions or health insurance or anything else, right? It was like, I just want to be around that group of dudes that I've grown up with at the firehouse, and I want that, right? And so we kind of just built it all around that concept. It's just trying to give guys ideas and help to talk about what's really going on in the firehouse, what we're all, because everywhere we go, we've done it at Parsons, Kansas, University of Missouri, Mizzou does a winter fire school. We've done it there. We've got some local departments that are wanting us to do it now. Everywhere we go, it's the same conversations, right? They're like, we're all super young. The departments are turning over. We have this new crop of people coming in. How do we deal with that? What are we dealing with? And one of the good examples I can give you, we were at Winter Fire School, and one of the guys here from St. Louis was there. I've known him for a long time, from Ferguson. And he was like, I just can't get with these new kids. Like, they don't listen. We fought and fought and fought in our union contract to not have to train on the weekends. The weekends are ours to do what we want. And they want to go out and train on the weekends. What the hell is wrong with that? I don't know what to do with it. And so I was like, all right, Denny, time out. Like, let's talk about this, right? And I said, when it comes to history and traditions and union contracts and all of that stuff, did you set them down and like explain it to them? Did you talk to them about where this came from, like what was happening in the past, why it became what it is? Explain, and he was like, well, no. I'm like, well, then how do you expect them to, like, is it their fault or is it your fault? Because you're not bringing them up the right way. Like, we have to look at it. It's not always the young guy's fault, right? Like, are we actually training them? Are we actually bringing them up the right way? Are we explaining it? I grew up in a fire service where I went to work and they told me what to do, and I just said, yes, sir, and went to work. Like, there was no questions. These younger guys coming in they're smarter, they're educated, they have college degrees, right? They're all of these things. And so they want to know why we're doing the things that we're doing. And so why can't we just take 5 minutes and explain it to them? And it's just taking, like, that's basically the whole class, right? It's just deep diving into what kind of problems people are having, and can we give them examples and things that are working for us, the award ceremonies and, medal days and the things that we're doing to praise our people and make it better. And, uh, one of the guys that was in the class, Brad Joker, he actually worked for us and went on to a different department because of some union contract issues and pay issues that we were having. He was an older guy. He said, one of the things I loved about your guys' culture there, and he goes, everything's a big deal, right? Like, when a guy gets promoted, it's a big deal. Like, there's a promotional ceremony. Like, guys go out and they have a party for him, and they go out and have a couple of beers, and they do, like, it's not just a throw the badge across the desk and like, good luck, bud, have a great day. Like, everything we do is a big deal. You guys are always doing stuff together. And so we just built it around that, like what's working for us, and try to give people ideas and concepts and hope that it works for them, right?
You know what just really sparked in my brain in the middle of that conversation when we're basically talking about the generational shift is the older guys have obviously, because they've been around longer, have a better idea of tradition, like fire service tradition. Like you said, the medal ceremonies, the promotional parties. You understand, like, the grassroots reason why we do things in the fire service. The younger guys, like you said, have more information. They have degrees. They're smarter. But that's because we have this doorway, what I call a cell phone, a smartphone. Right. The fire service is so much bigger, and the younger generation is trying to keep up with the Instagram fire service. What I mean is, the smoke divers, the FDIC instructors. They see this day in and day out. And that's the reason for me why on the weekends, I'm like, dude, we got to do something. We got to get our hands on, because Cody Trestrel on the weekly scrap said, like, this is for them, and if I'm not doing something every single day, then I'm letting down the community and I'm not feeling this, and it's just so much pressure I think the younger generation is putting on themselves, where the older guys who've been around a little bit, they have the experience and they have that deep rooted tradition. I think there needs to be, with your presentation and other people, there needs to be that middle ground. And like you said, explaining why we see it this way and explaining from your point of view or older guys' point of view, like why we do things this way, and try to find a middle ground.
Well, and that exact example that I gave, and when I told him that, I said, as a captain, right, I'm sitting at the kitchen table. Traditionally, weekends we have breakfast in the morning, we get truck checks and then we have breakfast in the morning, we're hanging out. And if I'm sitting at the kitchen table with a new guy and he looks at me, he's like, hey, Cap, like, can we go out and throw ladders today? Like, can we go force a door, do whatever? What am I doing to him if I tell him no? Right? Just because the contract says we're not going to plan things on the weekend, right? So of course I'm going to tell him yes, right? And so but then I balance it with the older guys and like, hey, I'm going to take him out here and do this. If you want to join, great. If you don't, that's okay. Or if you just want to come out here and put your 2 cents in, right? And most of the times that's what ends up happening, right? Is I go out there with a new guy, we start to do something, the senior guys come out and they're included and they participate. They just may not put all their gear on and do whatever, right? And I'm okay with that, right? That's that middle ground of making sure that the young guy gets what he wants and we're not turning him away. The biggest thing is to not tell him no, right? I mean, if I tell him no, what's that do for that kid? 2 weeks in and he's like, well, the captain said, no, I can't do this stuff. So I'm just not going to do it, right? And we're turning them off from what we're going to do. So it's always just trying to find that balance in all of it.
I've definitely fallen victim to that. And I know there's a lot of company officers that don't intend to kind of say no in a way, but I've said, what are we doing for training? Or I've asked, what are we doing for training? And it's like, well, I got some evals I need to work on, or I'm doing this stuff for the chief. So, I mean, maybe we'll get to some training, maybe not. And initially I would say, well, the company officer is not going to put together training, so I guess we're not training today. That's how I handled my shift for the majority of the first half of my career. And then on the back end of it, I was like, why do I need the company officer to run the training? He doesn't need to run the training. We could do that as a crew. I mean, we basically are the majority. The company officer's got stuff to do. He's got stuff to do. But let's go out and do something on our own. It's not that big a deal. And obviously, you can go to the company officer. He's like, do you mind if we go out here and throw ladders and pull hose? He's probably like, no, man, go do your thing. And I'm sure he may poke his head out or may not if he's or her are truly busy. That's fine. Do your thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think we have tried really hard to build the senior man role in the firehouse, right? Like that's how I grew up, was that I had like growing up in St. Louis City at the 26s. My captain rarely ran my training every day, right? It was always the senior guys. Whatever we did, now if it was getting out of the house and like going to a vacant building and pulling lines or something, then obviously he was involved, right? But if it was just around the house, sitting around talking, going through things, looking at tools, whatever, it was the senior guy. And that's the culture I grew up in. And so we've really tried to bring that to where I'm at now and get guys to buy in. And because of those days, right, I can look at the senior guy and go, hey, I need you to take the new guy out. I need you to do this with him, whatever. I got evals or whatever stuff I got to get caught up on, right? And that drives the training for the day then. And then I can hurry up and get my stuff done and hopefully jump in and put my 2 cents in the end and, whatever it is. And I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things, Preston, I try to focus on the guys too, like even that stuff. There's nights I might be up till midnight doing paperwork. You know what I mean? Because after dinner, I'd rather go out, sit in the back of the bay at the table and smoke a cigar and be with the guys, right? Instead of sitting in my office doing reports or whatever it is, right? And so the sacrifice is I might be up till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning doing my stuff, but that stuff to me is too important culturally. I've had new guys come to me and say, like, I've learned more sitting at this table than I have at most of the trainings and stuff that we go to, just because we just sit and talk fire stuff and tell stories and, whatever it is. So,
Yeah, I tell you, that is a goal of mine. Someday when I become a big boy and get a red helmet, I want to create the back of the bag culture. We don't really have it in my department. There's some places that you can do a sit on a tailboard, but we went through this phase of we don't want furniture out in the bay because exhaust fumes could be soaked into the furniture, and then you got carcinogens. And plus, Colorado, we're all crunchy or granola out here. Everybody's on a health kick. Every time I run into somebody outside of Colorado, they're like, "Oh, what kind of CrossFit workout are you guys going to do this morning? All you Colorado boys? Nobody smokes, nobody drinks, everybody's working out." I'm like, I mean, you're not entirely wrong.
right.
Most fire departments in Colorado, they're all really, really fit individuals for the most part. And I don't know. I don't know where that culture came from. But then at the same time, when I want to smoke some cigars, it's it's hard to get that culture, get that camaraderie built up, just because it's kind of frowned upon right now. But I'd like to bring it back a
Yeah,
little
and,
bit.
and I tell guys all the time, just because I go out there to smoke a cigar doesn't mean you have to, right? But just come sit out there and hang out and talk. And we've just built that culture around it where guys, I mean, Christmas Eve dinner this last year, Station 5 came over to 2, so we had, 14 guys, whatever, they're hanging out. After dinner, we had 14 dudes sitting around the bay table, sitting outside, hanging out, half of them smoking cigars, half of them not, whatever. But like, I took a picture of it just of like, hey, dude, like this is where it's at. This is what it's supposed to be. And guys are laughing and joking and cutting up and telling stories, and I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. So,
Yeah,
but
beautiful.
it's I mean, at the same time, like one of the things we talk about, because we talk about culture and a lot of we do our near miss class. It's part of the academy curriculum now. And part of that, like the first hour, I talk about firehouse culture and how not to be a douchebag in the firehouse and what it's going to be like on your first day, and all of that stuff, right? And um, it's just like one of the things I tell them, I'm like, building the culture is hard enough as it is, but it's fucking hard to keep it. Like, it is a daily grind almost, like, to keep it rolling and keep it moving in the right. Because as soon as you slack off, right, it'll start to trend the wrong way. Um, and at 32 years in the fire service, to like want to keep grinding, it's hard sometimes. Like, there's days I want to throw my hands up and be like, whatever. I got 6 years left. Well,
Yeah, it's easy to do that.
Yeah.
It's easy to just throw your hands up and be like, "Yeah, I'm on my way out. You guys need to figure it out. I don't care."
Right. Yeah.
Which I've seen more often than not. Well, cool. We touched on the culture and the firehouse culture more specifically, and I love that. If anybody gets a chance to sit in on that presentation, they absolutely should. Everybody knows I love culture, and everybody that's listened to this podcast long enough understands why I think it's important. And I also have my own presentation on it, right? And I got to teach that at fire school this year. But let's talk a little bit about something that you're passionate about as well, and that's truck work, truck operations, search culture. What was your first experience on the truck? Have you always been on the truck?
No. So growing up in St. Louis City, we were an all Quint department, right? I'm sure you've heard that before, right? They're starting to transition away from that a little bit. They're going back to true engine companies and stuff. So um, I kind of fell in love with it, though, in the Quint concept part of it, when everybody falls into it. So first do is fire tech, second do is truck, third do is backup water, and second line, and then the hook and ladders always do truck work. Squads pick up the truck work, coming in. I was very, very fortunate, and where the older guys in St. Louis City are like, we've lost the truck culture and it's going away. But there's those guys who are holding on to it and trying to push it. And I was very lucky. My senior man was an old hook and ladder guy that was now on a Quint. And so when we fell into that truck slot, at number 2, like, he pushed me really hard to the search culture and all of those things, even back then, right? 20 some years, 25 years ago. And so that's where I kind of fell in love with it and started it. And then, coming to St. Charles City, Unfortunately, we fall into that order of arrival, sort of, our ladder trucks are quints, or always have been. But we recently, last year, purchased 200-foot mid-mount Pierce Ascents, and we built them around trying to get away from. Now they're still quints because we have to, because ISO, whatever. But trying to push it down the truck route, right, and building them as trucks, not as ladders. With they just happen to have two cross ladders on them, right, and sort of building it around that. But then trying to change the mindset, and getting ourselves in a better truck culture. And fortunately, right now we have a deputy chief that is very much all in, and so he's been pushing that. When we had our first, we brought my buddy Matt Paglione from the FDNY, Danny from Boston, and Larry from Houston. We brought him in and did a week-long truck class just for that, right? To start shifting that mindset, setting up the truck, using it, actually looking at the full capabilities of it. We did, everybody that works on the truck, they had to go through this 40-hour class. And then trying to just shift it off of that quint mindset as much as we can and go from there. So, but yeah, so I just been passionate about it and trying to change what we're doing. Obviously, this year in Kansas, when I talked to you, that victims first mindset class that we were doing was based around a lot of that. And in 2023, we did a bunch of residential search training and really trying to push that culture. And from, I think, like October of 23, going into the next year, we pulled 9 people out of buildings in like a 7-month period.
Whoa.
And so to me, obviously it's luck of the draw, right? Those things have to happen. But at the same time, that just showed where we were as a department, and guys were paying attention, and they were putting truck work ahead of what we used to do. Where, when I got there 17 years ago, it was the first 2 companies both pulled in lines off, right? First in company pulled a line, second in company pulled a line, and then they stood at the front door and fought over who was going to get to the fire first. And so now we've gone from that to, fire attack. When the ladder arrives, they're doing truck work, they're taking search. Our driver's operating as an OB, and doing all these things that we were never ever would have done before. So, but yeah, so it's been fun to do, but it's made me passionate about it.
Yeah, I mean, call it luck of the draw, but at the same time, it's nice probably for you to know that you've been trying to push this culture a little bit, and then you got some results out of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you have to take it for what it is. And, the first one we had over on Hall Street, like the 2 ladders were first in. So we had to lead off. There was nothing we could do about it. Right. But then the ambulance crew, our guys on the ambulance fight fire off the ambulance, right? So they carry a can, set of irons, hooks, all of their stuff on the ambulances. So those guys came off with a good mindset and ready to go, and were right in the door behind us. And the ambulance guys actually found the victim in the kitchen. When we talk about that data collection point of firefighter rescue survey, like, from time of call to 10 minutes is the window of survivability, right? We had her found and out of the building within 9 minutes.
Beautiful.
So yeah.
Yeah. My battalion chief is encouraging me to put on like a search presentation for the line, not because I'm trying to make money or because I'm the search guru, but because I've been out to some search classes, and I'm not very well versed, but I know about firefighter rescue survey. So my chief's like, the people need this information, and as much as you want, you like, we know you can lead a horse to water, but you can't get force a horse to drink. So you can tell them all day long till you're blue in the face about firefighter rescue survey, but they may or may not actually click the link. But we're going to make it a shift-wide training to give people that data. So because the data, it's really hard to deny the numbers, and
for sure.
And so that what we're trying to do is incorporate some of that. My battalion chief also would love to see a truck culture in my organization. Hopefully I'm not diming them out. But right now we're a 1 quint truck in a 8-station department, so we got a ways to go. But I do want to ask you this, because over time I think we're gonna keep pushing it. There are some diehards that want truck stuff in my department. I've been talking with Rob Fisher. I had Arthur Ashley on here, but you said you brought in some guys from the outside that you knew to kind of teach things and bring things along. Do you think that was a huge turning point in bringing that type of culture in your department just by having outside guys teach it instead of internal?
Yeah. So it's the 100-mile rule, right? Uh, Matt and I taught. So Matt teaches all over the country. He teaches with on-scene training. Aaron Heller and those guys. We became friends, I don't know, 25 years ago, whatever. We've always kept up. But when we were anytime we put these truck classes together, this was the third time we brought them in. A couple times was a county-wide deal. This was the first time for our own department. And he's like, Chip, I'm not going to teach them anything you haven't already told them. And I'm like, yeah, but you're Matt from the FDNY. And they're going to be like, you know what Matt said? And it's going to be the exact same thing we've already talked about, right? But that's going to make it click. And that's just the way it is. I mean, Rob Fisher and I have talked about that. A ton of us have had that conversation. Sometimes you just have to, you got to put your pride aside for a second and bring somebody else in and be like, hey, they're going to teach them all the same stuff we've already talked about, but for some reason it's going to click because it wasn't Preston beating on the drum again for the 100th time, right? And so, yeah, I mean, and part of it too is having the support like your battalion chief, or for me, it's the deputy chief that we have. I mean, the battalion chiefs are very supportive of it too, but our deputy chief being young and aggressive and wanting to see this blue collar mentality across the fire department, right?
I just got the chills.
Yeah,
That made me feel good.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Brett, and he'll probably roll his eyes at me, but the first meeting or the first class we did with them, we sent all the firefighters out to the trucks to do like go over the truck and walk through the trucks and all this stuff because they were brand new, and we kept the company officers in the room with the deputy chief and Larry from Houston, and we were sitting there talking about tactics and that company officer level stuff. And at some point, the deputy chief, kind of brought it up, and he's like, "This is what we're doing. We're moving to a truck culture. You can either fit in or fuck off, and if you don't like it, you can go to an engine. Like that's it." And all the guys were like, "Okay, I guess this is what we're doing."
Oh, beautiful.
Right? And so, but having that support is huge, right? And you're not fighting. We're not fighting an uphill battle anymore. Everybody's on the same page, moving in the right direction. We still have hurdles to get over, right? But and it's baby steps. Like in May, we're doing a truck class again, a shift-wide truck class, right? We've got a vacant building we've been using for training. It's an old car dealership, so they're setting up some props and we're gonna BES and we're gonna do some forcing and whatever. I've got my driver is gonna lead the driver conversation as the OB on the trucks, right? What he does as an OB, where he throws ladders, when to take windows, when not to take windows, whatever it is. So, and then the next time we do training, we'll build off of it again. And then
reinforce.
September, we'll do live burns. We're doing shift-wide live burns. The deputy chief got it approved. He's going to pay guys overtime to come in on their day off, and we're going to burn. And then we'll just run all engine truck stuff that day, right? And
nice.
The engine guys will do engine work, and so hopefully by the end of the year, it's clicking and we're moving in the right direction.
Please tell me you made like a T-shirt or a challenge coin or something that said you can either fit in or fuck off.
We need to. We need to.
Oh, man, I love it, dude. I might steal it if you don't. No, that's for sure. I love it, man. So, okay, so you touched on it a little bit. You have a presentation called Victims First Mindset. And is it based on a lot of that philosophy, everything, firefighter rescue survey and
yeah, it's firefighter. So, and to your point for the shift training, right? Like when we did that back in March, we took all of that data. We took the big whiteboard, right, and stood out in the bay, and we put all that data up for the guys to read. And we walked through all the data, and then we immediately transitioned into drags and how to keep people low and why we're keeping them low to the ground now. And we're not just throwing a kid over our shoulder and running out of the building, right? And we're all guilty of that, right? I mean, the very first, I think back now, right? The very first rescue I was a part of, I had probably 6 months on. It was in St. Louis City. It was early in the morning. We found this kid. It was hot. It was hot. And I was just I was chasing my senior man around this building, right? We run up with a 2-year-old in the building, and he kicks in the door, and I'm just chasing him around the building. I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to keep up, right? And we find this kid, and now looking back, like he immediately picked the kid up and stood up and ran out of the building. And when I say it's hot, like we both had to get new gear. We immediately got sent to headquarters to replace our gear. Not that kid was going to survive that environment anyway, but did we do him any good by standing up and running out of the building? Right. But 25 years ago, like the data wasn't out, like we weren't having these conversations and doing these things. Right. And so that shift training, we started those conversations and using those experiences like, hey, you got to stay low with these kids and whatever. Right. And so that led into the rescues we had that year. And so basically the program we have now, the deputy chief, Joe Grignani, we sat down and we put this together and like, okay, this is what we did. This is how we've changed our culture. This is where we've gone from, 17, 18 years ago. And then building that search culture around it, using the data and everything, using these rescues. And in the class, we went through the audio and the helmet cam of all those rescues. So we could just talk about it. We went through the scenarios, talked about how they happened, what the outcomes were. And then at the other parts of the class is, as the deputy chief, how does he support that? Right? How does he not create policies to go against the blue collar mentality? Right? How do we culturally, if a guy wants to wear a hoodie, let him wear a hoodie, right? Like all of those like cultural things, right? That, he's like, I want firemen to be firemen. If I just get out of the way, they'll be firemen. I don't have to micromanage them, right? And so that's sort of his part to the whole thing is how does he support what we're trying to do and let it happen.
I cannot for the life of me figure out what it is about the hoodie battle or I mean, okay, so Ian Schulty on the East Coast he got his backwards hat thing that went freaking viral, which he had no intention of it going viral, which he has a Relentless Rejects hat, by the way. So shout out to him. But it's that conversation. Obviously, don't go out on a call with your hat backwards. Don't be a dumbass. Sure. But if you're training, right, that's the last thing I care about. The hoodie thing, I don't understand why we fight those battles. And you have to, on top of that, you have to create an entire presentation called Victims First Mindset to remind people that we need to have this victims first mindset. Right. You can't wear a hoodie, but I also have to remind you that you need to prioritize victims.
Right. Well, and I don't know, I guess culture, like I look at all of that stuff and Joe and I talk about, right? I don't know how to say it, like look good, feel good, play good, right? We talk about sports culture all the time. I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. Above the door going out to the engine bay is a play like a champion sign, to remind guys like it's the same thing, right? We're here to win today, right? And we talk about, Frank Lee from the FDNY talks about the winning mindset that they have in the FDNY, right? Like every day going to work that we're going to win today. Every run we're going to be successful. So I think it's just trying to create all of that. And unfortunately, you're right. We have to have those conversations because not every chief or every company officer out there is creating those cultures of helping people win and win in those moments. Right? I mean, we talk about that being the Super Bowl. Well, we got to figure out how to make that be ready for the Super Bowl. Right?
I want to build off that, but first I have to say something because I know you just said you're a Notre Dame fan. I'm a USC fan, so
I'm sorry.
Are they still going to do that rivalry? I don't know with the shifts of the conferences.
Yeah, I hope so.
But so Notre Dame has their thing when they go out on the field, and USC has a thing above their locker room going out to the field that says lock in, and every single player hits that on the way out to the field. So sports has that mastered where you transition from the firehouse, you go out, and for us, go out to the rigs, like lock it in. You are Mr. Professional, you're Mr. Expert. Let's go kick some ass. We could definitely do a better job taking that page from sports and incorporating that into our line of work.
Yeah, no, and that's why that's honestly why I put that sign up there, right? Because it all correlates, right? In our culture class, there's a slide in there, that has that sign and it has, Notre Dame's logo, God, country, and Notre Dame, right? And so, but it's because of the cultural part. Like if you watch the interviews with the coach and all the players after the national championship, obviously it didn't work out the way we wanted it to, right? But every single interview with the players was about culture. the culture of this team, the culture of this team. Like they just kept saying it over and over, right? And so why can't we take that and harness it and build it into what we're doing? It's obviously working for these teams, right?
Yeah. And so I talk about the military. I talked about the Marines specifically, right? Like if you've ever been in the military, you know the Marines get shit on when it comes to funding, accommodations, food, military bases. They get the worst of the worst. But they are the branch that you do not fuck with. Like they're called the Devil Dogs. They are the world's most like dangerous fighting force. Everyone on the planet knows this. And it's not because of the training. It's not because of the equipment. It's not because of the budget. It's not because of the cool uniforms or the class or the dress uniforms. It's because their culture that they've ingrained into every single Marine that they mold from day one. They are creating, I hate to say it in this way, but you know what I mean? Like they are creating killers. They're creating savages. Right. So you get Marines together. I mean, they're hard to control. Like when I was in the Navy, those dudes will fucking eat you alive, man. I mean, you don't want to drink too much with a bunch of Marines because it always turns into like a fight or a push-up contest or some crazy shit. Like it's wild, and it's all built around culture. That's why I push culture so much, because I've seen it in the military firsthand. And that's where I think, we need to start. When you have people that will lay it down 110% for the department, it's because it starts with the culture. And then when it gets to the fire ground, they're just gonna run. They're gonna go.
No, and I think, and one of the things we talk about in our culture class, right, is like you have to start on day one, right? And so what we have tried to create, unfortunately, my old battalion chief, Tim Wershing, has retired. He was the guy we had come in and talk to him on one of their first days. He's a 6'4", 240-pound ex-Army first cav. Like when the Army Navy game's on, he comes to work with his first cav Stetson on, and so he's an intimidating guy, right? And would stand in front of these new guys and just have that conversation, like, I need you to be all in, and if you're not all in, if you're not willing to dive in that window to go after that kid, the world needs good janitors too. Like, you can just walk out now. We don't want you here. And so I think it's starting it off on day one with these kids when they come in, and just having honest conversations about it. Now, then we transition. Now we're doing, on day one, one of our guys does a history conversation, right? He's got about a 20-minute presentation on the history of our fire department, where we've come, where we're going. And in that conversation, Nick always had that. He's like, I'm from St. Charles. My family lives here. My parents live here. They're here in the city. If you're not willing to lay it all out on the line for my family, then there's the door. Just walk out now. And so it's just setting those expectations early and getting it, moving in the right direction, use it. I mean, we are supposed to be a paramilitary organization, right? Not that I agree with all of it, but you have to hold on to some of those traditions. When I got in the fire service in St. Louis City, like, it was so far the other way that if you went to headquarters without your hat and tie on and you didn't salute the chief when you walked through, you were going to get transferred the next day to an engine house you didn't want to be at, right? I'm not saying we got to go that far, right? But we can still hold on to some of that structure and take what the Marines are doing and take what, I mean, that was one of the first books I read. I did not spend time in the military. I have a lot of family members that did. I have a lot of close friends that have. I've been deployed multiple times. So I've learned from them and talked to them and taken everything I can from them. But one of the first books I read when I got promoted was the Marine decision making, combat decision making book, right? And that was a huge, like, eye opening, like where their mindset is at and where mine should be every day, which ultimately is make a decision so you don't die, right? I mean, that's really what you take out of that book. But so yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And to build off that, John Velez and I, when we were at FDIC, we kept saying that, like, reinforcing people's why. Like, apparently you guys get to them early, and you draw the line in the sand, basically. And there's like, if you're not going to do this, then maybe you can go flip burgers or sell ice cream or something like that. Because if you got into the fire service to serve and to help others, well, there's a sign at McDonald's that says now hiring, and they have a sign up there that says over 10 million served. So if you want to serve, you can go do that. but we're going above and beyond here. I love that message. But John and I were trying to say, like, if you have a problem with culture in your firehouse and your leadership isn't bought in a certain way, then you need to reinforce their why. Maybe someone did just get in for paying benefits because they want to feed their family. And maybe the oath was a ceremonial high five for them because they weren't explained how important that is. But instead of writing them off, we need to be the ones to educate and help reinforce.
No, for sure. I mean, I've had to grow in that, Preston, over the years, right? I mean, if you would have asked me, if we were having this conversation 15, 16 years ago, I'd have told you I would have just wrote those guys off, right? Like, they're a piece of shit. I don't want anything to do with them. I'm not going to help them. I'm not going to do anything, right? And at some point, I grew up, right? And realized, like, all right, maybe they bring something to the table that we can use in the best. And then we can try to bring them up the rest of the way, right? Like, maybe the guy's a really good paramedic, but he's not a great fireman, right? So let's
I know about
use
those.
him as a really great paramedics, right? And use him for that, but then get him to buy in to be better, on the other side. If we support him, we're nice to him, right? We get him, instead of just pushing him away and treating him like shit. Like, how about let's culturally, cultivate what he has and help him grow, and use him to grow the other guys that maybe are great firemen, but they're not great paramedics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a conversation we have all the time. Like, you signed up for this job, you can be good at both, right? Not that we all love EMS or however you want to say it, right? But you can still be good at both, right? The citizens expect you to be good at both. I mean, we always talk about putting them first. Well, we should be putting them first all the time.
Yeah, there's a hard pushback right now for the end of the job firemen that I know. Are you still a medic? You were a medic for a long time. You still a medic?
30. This year's 30 years, actually.
Okay. I try not to tell people that I'm a medic, but I'm a medic. And why do I not tell people? Because every time you do, they're like, nerd. Like, once you go back to the box, I know what you're all about. And I'm like, damn. Like, for some reason, it's frowned upon to be a medic at conferences.
No, we've gone through the same thing. I mean, it's been the same stuff, right? And like, how I got into it, I had no intentions of getting into EMS. Like, I wanted to go to a big city fire department. I watched Backdraft 900 million times, and I wanted to be that guy, right? And my dad set me down and was like, "You're gonna have to go to paramedic school." And I'm like, "What? Oh, not doing that." And he's like, "You're gonna have to go to paramedic school." He goes, "If you want the way the fire service is going, if you want the most opportunity possible for the most jobs out there, you need to go to paramedic school." Because at the time when I took St. Louis City's test, there was 5,000 guys in the convention center for 100 jobs, right? So he's like, "You're gonna have to open the door to more opportunities." And I was like, "Okay." Right. And I started working in East St. Louis and as an EMT, and I went to medic school, and I was like, maybe this isn't so bad. Right. And so it afforded me the opportunity to go to our department that I'm at now, where everybody's a paramedic from the chief all the way down. Right. And so I wouldn't be there if it wasn't for that. 20 years ago, I started working for St. Louis Children's Hospital, flying on the critical care transport team. That was my day off job. 12 years ago, I switched to another company, Survival Flight, which I'm now the regional director over 4 helicopter bases, and that's what I do on my day off. And I would not be providing for my family the way I am now if it wasn't for me being a paramedic.
What? Yeah.
So,
that's the harsh. I mean, that's the truth about it. And I was told the same thing when I first got out of the military. I thought I was gonna just be able to pick whichever fire department I wanted to work at, and they were gonna be like, "Oh yeah, Navy veteran, absolutely, come on board." But that wasn't the case, and I only had EMT. And someone after like my 6th application did not get approved. They said, "Dude, everybody needs medics. Everybody needs medics now." So, and I had the GI Bill, so I mean, it didn't make a ton of sense to not go. It was free. The GI Bill was going to pay for it, so I was like, all right, fine. Went to paramedic school. I was one of those guys, though. I went to P school to make myself more competitive on the fire side. Nowadays, we're starting to see the opposite. We're starting to see the paramedics that are going into the fire service because they're tired of being parked in front of a quick trip and waiting for another call, right? And they're like, I want benefits, I want pay, I want a gym, I want a kitchen, and I want a recliner. And so that's how they end up in the fire service. And so you're right. I was that guy, though, too, when they first got in, and I was like, what are you about? Once I found out they were a medic just trying to look for benefits, I wrote them off. And I would tell the entire department, this guy's not about it. He's not a fireman. And I'm like, no, we have to change this narrative. We have to just reinforce that why, build upon the why a little bit, which is an absolute struggle.
No, and I watched your show at FDIC, and so you brought up a good point too about our attitude towards the chiefs, right? And Joe and I, obviously, Joe is a very positive influence for our department as the deputy chief right now. He will be the fire chief. Not all of them are bad.
Right.
Some of them are good. Now, can we pick out the bad ones and maybe, deal with them individually? But to get on Instagram every day or whatever and just bash chiefs as a whole, like it bothers him to see those posts sometimes, because it's like, I'm not that guy. Why am I getting caught just because I'm a chief? Now suddenly I'm a terrible person because I took this job when he's doing it to drive the department in the right direction, right? So I think we all have to sit down and look in the mirror for a second and, have that sort of conversation with ourselves. Like, if we want to make this better, then we actually have to make it better.
Yeah, and that's what I talked about at the beginning, early on in this conversation, was the Instagram culture, the social media. We're doing things more for likes and comments and validation from people we've never met. And the best way to do that is to sensationalize topics and expose the problem, which is, safety culture chiefs. And if you're wearing a white helmet, you're not on the line. You're not one of us. We don't want you in the room. But unfortunately, what I finally realized is that the rooms I'm in, they're not full of decision makers. Like, the rooms that the chiefs are in, those are people actually creating an influence and an impact and helping make the organization better. So what can I do to get myself in that room? Well, it's not throwing my chief under the bus and talking shit about him constantly or smash my knee into the desk while I'm recording a podcast. But yeah, so that's kind of the message. And people might, it's going to happen, right? Like when John and I put that message out, we had a conversation afterwards of like, are people going to call us sellouts? Are people going to say, oh, we're like part of the establishment and all this stuff? I'm like, that's not what we're trying to say. What we're trying to say is, if you want the fire service to be better, if you want your organization to be better, you kind of got to play the long game with this stuff. And the likes and the comments are only going to help you sell hats. They're not going to help you make a larger impact.
Well, and so I've been struggling with this over the last year, probably. We're a young department. We have a lot of we've got another 15 guys leaving over the next 5 years, right? And so we probably already, out of an 80-man department, we've already turned over 50 in the last 10, right? And so there's going to be some promotional opportunities coming up. And my initial reaction was like, I don't want that. I'm a captain on the truck. Like, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to ride my time out, and then we had that conversation, right? If not you, then who, right? And also, sitting down and doing some soul searching, like, if I want to help make this department better, can I make a whole shift better versus just an engine house better? Or, you know what I mean? Like, you have to start thinking about that. It's not about being a sellout. It's like, everybody says they want people to be good chiefs. Well, then we got to have good people be chiefs.
Right.
Right.
Plain
If
and
we
simple.
all sit back and say, I just don't want to do that, I'm not going to put myself in that position. Well, then how is it ever going to get better? Because that's how we end up with those bad people in those positions, is because the good people aren't stepping up to do it. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, very well said. It's a constant struggle, right? Because of that identity crisis and stepping off the line and going to command staff and admin. Like, it's not sexy whatsoever. But like you're saying, it's like, if I do this, am I doing it to improve the department and help the people that are coming up after me? That's a long, hard conversation that everybody needs to have with themselves and figure out. Because we do want some salty, fucking gritty captains. I'll take it. If you want to finish out your career as a captain, like, so be it. Who am I to tell, Mike Dugan that he should have been a chief and not a captain?
Right.
No, absolutely not. So I mean, there's a spot for everybody, but the conversation needs to continue to be had.
Well,
with.
And to your point, right? Like, I just talked to a younger guy the other day. And he was giving me a hard time. He knows I'm putting in for this spot when it comes up, right? his dad was my battalion chief. We've grown up, I've known him forever. And he said something about coming out. And he's like, well, I didn't think I could invite you out anymore. He's just giving me a hard time. And I'm like, I'm not going to change, right? I've already warned the chiefs that if I get this position, like who I am now is what you're getting. I'm not going to change. You know what I mean? And he's like, yeah, we probably need that a little bit. And I'm like, well, I mean, it is what it is, right? So instead of shying away from it, why can't we just keep being who we are and put ourselves in those positions?
Hey, what's up, Rejects? Real quick, are you looking for a way to help promote the show? Because as you know, this platform, this community, this podcast has grown organically through word of mouth, through people like you sharing it to like-minded individuals. So if you can please do so, it's absolutely free. Like, share, subscribe, leave a review either on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast or watch it. That would be much appreciated. Number 2, on Instagram, for $2.99, you can actually be a subscriber at the Relentless Rejects on Instagram, and you can actually be behind the scenes and help come up with questions for future guests, recommend future guests, talk about products, tactics, just reach out to like-minded individuals. It is super cheap, $2.99. You can help grow the platform behind the scenes if you feel compelled to do so there. And 3, this is a new one. We had our first batch of merch of shirts and hoodies come in, and I don't know how to say this, but they're all sold out already before I even got a shop set up on a website. So if you are interested in snagging a hat, a hoodie, or a t-shirt, and there are challenge coins on the way, please message me on Facebook or Instagram if you are interested in merch coming soon. And with that, I appreciate you so much. Back to the show. Yeah, no, I love that. And so that makes me, we talked about building off of this is the pushback, right? The anti-safety culture movement, the aggressive firefighter movement is great. Like the victim's first mindset is great. But what happens when there's a situation where you experienced a near miss and almost lost people on a call? I would love for you to, if you feel comfortable, like to tell a little bit of that story, but then maybe close it off with like, what does your mindset look like when your own people are almost taken from you, right? Like you almost have a line of duty death.
Yes. I mean, 2014, so it's been 11 years ago now. We had a basement fire that extended in the first floor. We created a wind-driven fire. It was a January wintertime storm, like 10 inches of snow on the ground, 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts coming into the Charlie side of the building. And we opened the place up and we had some extension and it took off. We had 4 guys that were coming up the basement steps when the whole first floor flashed over on them. They ended up 2 of our guys who were on the ambulance couldn't go the direction they knew to go. And so they kind of got turned around and lost in the building. We were 30 minutes into this fire. So we were in the overhaul mode, right? The class we do is actually called Overhaul to Fireball. But we were in the overhaul mode. Like Kirby, he had his hood on around his neck, but he didn't have it up over his ears. So he crawled around in flashover conditions for about 1 minute and 45 seconds with no hood on. He obviously has some permanent damage. He lost most of one ear and spent about 18 weeks in and out of the burn unit, because of that. They were able to find a window and dive out of a window. Scott and Matt were able to make it up and down the hallway out the front door. We were very, very, very lucky. Obviously, our class is a 4-hour class. We could make it an 8-hour class if we wanted to, just because of the deep dive into some of the topics. We actually took, for the class, we have helmet cam video from the second arriving company all the way to the end of the fire. So we took all of that, matched it up with the audio. But then we took and interviewed all of the guys afterwards, because obviously when we talk about near misses and, if you deep dive into what happened and how it happened, we shouldn't be able to talk to those guys still today. And so we took that opportunity and interviewed all of them, and we recorded those interviews, and that's part of the class. And so you actually get to hear their side of it. And Matt Mackley, one of the guys, does a great job of it's just like sitting around the kitchen table talking to them. And He's pretty open and honest about his feelings and how it happened. Um, but so through all of that, basically where that took it, we were in a place in 2014 where we talked about in the class. After 9/11, we got really heavy into USAR and hazmat and all of those extracurricular activities. And we were an older department when I got there. We had some guys in their 60s still there, like, it was, and this was also a time when I got there that you had to have experience to get hired there. Like a department that you stepped up to. And so when I got there, right, it was like, hey, let's go pull some lines or throw some ladders. And they're like, I've been doing that for 30 years. Like, we've got all this other stuff we got to go do. And so we were spending a lot of time on those extracurricular things and not on the basics of firefighting. We weren't training our incident commanders. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you got 30 years on, you'll figure it out.
Right.
There was nothing in all of that. And so this happened to us. It was a huge wake up call. We thought we were really good. Back then, especially, and still probably a little bit now, like we were considered the city cowboys in our county. And, that term has been thrown around a lot by other departments. So it kicked us in the teeth and made us take a step back and said, okay, we got to rebuild our training plan. And so that's actually when I came in as a training officer for our shift, and we just went back to the basics basically, right? And said, okay, we got to start over. And fortunately, at that same time, we had the city offered a retiree buyout. So we lost about 15 or 20 of those guys all at once. We lost 9 captains at once. And so there was this huge cultural shift of younger guys coming up. And now we had a bunch of really young, eager captains. We had a bunch of really young, eager kids coming in. And so some of those old things that we were fighting against kind of went away, right? And so we started that training shift and started pushing it. And basically to your point, where we're at now and trying to balance the safety with the aggressive mindset is that, so the Deputy Chief Joe Grignani, he was actually a young kid, right? A new guy at this fire, made a mistake that was detrimental to the fire, and he will live with that forever, right? He has actually come to, when we've done it in-house, that class, the last time he came in and we actually had him talk about what happened. And it's hard for him to talk about. Like, he gets emotional about it, and it set him on a course to be the best that he could possibly be in the fire service. Became a very, very strong, aggressive captain, and now is the deputy chief, right? And that drives him every day. And so what we have talked about is that, yes, we need to keep our guys safe, right? None of us want to live through that ever again. I wasn't at the fire. I was at home that day. I got brought into the fold of teaching the class because of the training side of it and what we were changing and how we were making the department better. But to get that phone call that one of my best friends is on his way to the hospital and you don't know what is going on with him, right? That's a hard day, and we don't want anybody to go through that. And that's why we do that class, and we're very honest about the mistakes that we made, is because we don't want anybody else to ever have to do that again. And so, but to take that safety culture, and then basically what Joe and I have talked about is that if we can be aggressive and we can have an aggressive mindset, we can have a victims first mindset, but we're safe because we do the training on the backside and we make sure that they understand what they're doing, how they're doing, and why they're doing it. That's what keeps them safe, right? It's not about standing in the front yard, not going in. It's going to, flowing water through the window is not keeping us safe, right? That's not the thing. The training and the mindset and making sure that they have the experience they need to make those decisions, that's what's keeping them safe on a daily basis and putting them knowing when they can push it and not to push it and when to take a chance to make a move and do what we need to do, right? So.
Yeah, that last part I think is absolutely key when you're talking about safety culture. Everybody's against safety culture. We get that stuff out of here, but I think what they're trying to say is, like, we're not out here to hit it hard from the yard. Like, we're going to go. But you said, like, knowing when to go, when to not go, knowing when to push, when not to push, or at least mastering the basics training, repping it out over and over and over again. That's how you get safety. Because it's easy. I keep bringing it back to social media culture to say, we're not about this safety culture stuff. We're going to embrace this cowboy mindset and all this and stuff. But we are in danger of becoming reckless because we try to be known as the cowboys, right? Like, I don't need to put my hood up or something like that. And I wasn't there, and I don't know those people, so I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying there are people that have this mindset. But we even talked about it early on, like a era of firefighters that wouldn't put their mask on and smoking cigarettes in the house. Like, it's a culture shift. There's like this pendulum that's going back and forth, like the safety culture pendulum starting to swing back toward the middle, but we have to be very, very careful to not swing too far in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned that, right? Anything in training, there's always a shift in the pendulum, right? Like when we came out with the air management SOG, like that was one of the things that came out of this, or it was actually right before this fire, but we just started that air management stuff, right? And so the pendulum went all the way this way to where it was like, oh, I'm at half air, we're leaving the building.
Yeah.
Right. And there was no, like, guys couldn't grasp the common sense to it, right? And I'm like, dude, that's for, like, if you're in a 100 by 100 warehouse and it took you half a bottle to get there, yeah, that means you probably should leave. But if I'm 5 foot from the front door, you're good. You're okay. You don't have to, you know what I mean? But it took us like 6 or 8 months, a year to see that like shift back to the middle. And that's just one example. I feel like anytime we do training, right, like, or anything new comes out, we're going to shift this way, and then it finally falls in the middle. And yeah, I mean, it's been good to have guys push to be aggressive and do the right things, but also trying to do the training and all the things that we need to do on the backside, like, him getting the city to agree to pay all of the shifts overtime. We're bringing all of the guys in on their day off and paying them 8 hours of overtime to burn all day. Right? I mean, that's a big lift financially, right? I think it was I mean, it's tens of thousands of dollars to do that, right? And so and that's where he comes in. That his job now is to make those cases and do what we need to do to make the guys better. So
yeah. Really cool. I like what you explained though with the air management SOG, right? Because I out here in Colorado we have the Mile High Fire Conference, and I learned from some Aurora Fire guys that their scenario was, hey, we have 3 known victims on second floor residential structure, right? So 1,500 square foot house, 2,500 max. Second floor, you and your team are going to go up there and search, and we're doing oriented search, right? So we're kind of leapfrogging, searching bedrooms. We find a victim, pull them out. Find another victim, pull them out. And as soon as one person's like vibro alarm starts going off, it's like, okay, everybody get out of here, make your way out. We get outside the front of the structure and we pop our regulators off, and we're like, whew, man, that was a good training. And one of the Aurora Fire guys comes up to me, he's like, where's the third victim at? And we're like, oh, well, our vibro alarm went off, so we had to get out of the structure. And he's like, so you're okay with the third victim just being left on the second floor right now? And I'm like, I guess not. So like,
right.
it was one of those scenarios where I wasn't explained these things. He's like, what, you could have broke out a window, isolated a room, called for a ladder. How many people's vibro alarm were going off? I was like, one. He's like, okay, could have anchored that person at the top of the stairs while the two of you completed a search, and then make your way out. Or, it's like so many different variables that we could have done with that training scenario. But all I knew was our air management, air consumption SOG of halfway, or at least, especially when your vibro alarm goes off, like, get out. Your vibro alarm should never go off inside of a structure and all these things. And I'm like, yes. But then realizing, not really comprehending in the training that those were real victims, that I should have understood that what if those were real victims? What if this was a real scenario? You're not going to just bail.
Yeah. And, and this is one of the things I love about the fire service. Like, if you're truly in the fire service, right? I mean, and when we do our academy talk, one of the things I talk to the guys about is that you have to get outside your bubble, right? And you got to go to conferences. You got to go to, I hate it, but we got to go to line of duty death funerals and meet guys and spend time together and be there for each other, right? But the fun stuff is going to conferences and learning and doing all these things. And getting to sit down at an instructor dinner and have a conversation, and now we have a relationship and we can talk, and so but we learn so much from each other, and in training being able to use not just my experiences but what other people have done. So Matt, I go back to Matt in New York, right? That the fire that they had in the 19-story mid-rise, that they had like 32 cardiac arrests a couple of years ago. I don't know if you heard about it. It was in the Bronx. Chief Frank Lee does a class on it. I was down in Pensacola. He did a class on it. But my buddy Matt was at that fire. He was getting off that morning, and he just went over to help. He was actually off duty. He went over to help. And so, but to hear the stories from that, and to your point, right? One of the stories was when the guys were having to go on air at the third floor because there were smoke conditions, in the stairwell at the third floor, and they were making rescues on the 17th floor. And when they were calling out that they had found a victim on the 17th floor, their Viber alerts were already going off.
Mm-hmm.
And they still had to make it out of the building 17 floors down, right? And the guys did it. They found a way. They were leapfrogging apartments. They were going into apartments, taking a window, breathing fresh air, doing CPR, pulling back out in the hallway, leapfrog to the next apartment, right? And that was, what Chief Lee was talking about was the winning mindset, right? But also to your point, like, we have to learn how to train our guys that those things are going to happen, and at least have those conversations, right? Even if we can't recreate it or recreate that stress, but at least have those conversations and get their mind in the right place, that we're going to have to do what we have to do sometimes, right? And again, if we train our guys the right way, they're going to be safe in what they're doing. We can have good conversations, but we got to put them first, and we got to figure it out. Like you
Yeah.
said, isolate the room, take a window. I mean, do what you got to do, right? But so.
Yeah, no, dude, I'm loving this conversation. Like, we've talked about culture, now we're talking about mindset. We even talked about sports. We're talking about truck culture and tactics and presentations, and your guys' near miss, and how it seems like everybody that was involved has not necessarily benefited from it, but they've taken that scenario and they've tried to prevent other people from making that decision, right? Ultimately, making other people's careers better, making other people better based on those lessons learned.
Yeah, it was a huge wake up call it was huge. It was a big slap in the face, to
Yeah,
all
so
of
I
us.
want to talk to you about something else that is not necessarily physically apparent. It's not to the naked eye, you cannot see it. And that is like the mental health aspect of the job. You gave me a topic that you laughed at, but I think is important to discuss. And you said golf.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, and the way I interpreted that was, is that something that you use to decompress, to maybe just kind of reset everything and just clear your mind? Or is that just something you do
Yeah.
for fun?
No, I mean, it started out as something for fun, right? And then it became that for me, right? Part of it, we have a Gimme Golf Club. It's a golf club in St. Charles. It's down the road from the Firehouse. There's probably 10 of us from the Firehouse that are part of this golf club. And there's golf courses that are associated with it we can play. But it's really based around a community cultural based thing, right? There's 550 members, and there's just a bunch of dudes that hang out and love golf. And like Sunday, I was up there at the club watching the Masters, and there was probably 15 of us just hanging out together and laughing and busting balls, and it's almost an extension of the Firehouse, right? But yeah, there are days that I will go out and play by myself, right, and just go out and turn some music on and turn my phone, put it on silent, and not pay attention to it, and just decompress and spend some time in my own head and focus on something else other than work and all the stuff. It's been a great out. My son plays golf. So he played high school golf. And so it was a good outlet for us to spend a lot of time together. And we have a lot of great fire service conversations in that moment too, about his future and what he wants to do. And it gives us a moment to talk about that. And, I get to go on a couple of different trips a year, or even, uh, Katie, my girlfriend, she's bought into the whole idea and concept. So even when we go on vacation, I was in Florida last week instead of FDIC.
Mm-hmm.
It kept me out of trouble for her 40th birthday. Uh, but she comes and hangs out in the cart with me, and we just spend the day on the golf course, and she's bought into the whole idea, and it's just a good, it's good.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing for me to look forward to. One of the things I worry about from a mental health standpoint for a lot of guys is like, when the day is over and you turn the switch off, like, what are you going to do with yourself? Right. And we know that happens a lot. Right. I mean, Tim Worshing, who's my battalion chief, we talked about, we had that conversation a lot right before he retired. Right. So high school football, being part of teams and doing all that, baseball and all that growing up, turned 18, went straight to the Army, left the Army, came straight to the Firehouse. And all of his time, 25 years in the fire service, 26 years, whatever it was. So his entire life was structured around camaraderie and teams and uniforms and all of that stuff, right? And then all of a sudden, one day you're going to wake up and you're just going to, I'm done, right? We're just turning the switch off, right? And so how do you do that? What do and we had some really great conversations about it, and he actually did a great job and went to counseling and did that ahead of time to sort of clear his head and put himself in a great spot. Because my worry was like, if he doesn't have anything to do, like, what do you like? What's going to happen to him, right? I mean, you go from on his last day, he's still all in, right? Like, we had already promoted a battalion chief, so Aaron was riding in the car, so we put him on the fire truck with us on his last shift, his last 24. He rode on the fire truck with us and still smiling and loving every minute of it, right? Yeah, how do you turn it off? And
Right.
so for me, golf is that thing that I look forward to. Like, I'll have something to do. I have another group to be a part of and hang out with and be around the guys. And it's not that, yeah, you're still going to miss it. Right. But there's something else to look forward to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like the part that you said it's kind of like an extension of the Firehouse. That's really cool. And I asked out of my own curiosity because where I am currently at in my career, I am struggling with that so much right now. I don't have any hobbies outside of the fire service. When I'm not on shift, I'm doing podcasting stuff, reading articles. I'm like 110% fire service right now, which is really, I know it's not healthy. Obviously, when my girls are home, I'm dad and husband. But during the day, I'm like reading books, fire service related stuff. So I need to figure out what's going to be that thing I fall into that kind of helps me decompress because, I mean, other than the gym, I don't really have a ton. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And going all the way back, I mean, we touched on a little bit, but like, early in my career, I was kind of where you were at, right? 110% all in all the time. And not that I'm not in when I'm there, but my days off, the guys came first sometimes. And I was also working a second job. And, I was at a place in my life at one time where my ex wife, when we were still married, she was staying home with the kids. And I was working 2 and 3 jobs to make that work. And, so it was all about work and my career and what I could do to advance it. And I was all in all the time. And there were a lot of other factors into it, but you can't say that didn't play into where I ended up divorced,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, my head was not always at home like it probably should be sometimes, or paying attention, right? And so you got to find balance, and I had to learn that the hard way and figure that out. And even after that, it was still a struggle because then I had child support payments and everything else, right? So that's why I have this side job that I do, and I got kids in college and still paying a little bit of child support and whatever. So, but trying to balance that better and spend it, making time at home, but also making time for myself, making time for the firehouse, making time for the guys. Like, it's a battle that you got to keep working at it. And some days you're going to suck, and some days you're going to hit it out of the park. You just got to find the right balance.
Yeah, and the current thing I'm struggling with right now, because my wife has her own career. My wife's a PA, and she's basically like in her prime of her career. Like she wants to go to conferences, she wants to network, she wants to be involved in things.
Sure.
And so now there's just like give and take. But society, it makes it hard on women because she's mom. I mean, her nurturing skills are way more advanced than mine, inherently so. But so that means she's sacrificing more for the baby. And I was just at FDIC for a week, and trust me, like I got a little bit of the wrath when I got home, and she was trying not to, like be resentful in a way or jealous of that fact. But one thing I did not realize, when you are at FDIC or at a conference and you call your spouse in the middle of the night to check in, and you're like, I'm having a blast out here. I met so many people, and we got to do this during the day, and I learned this, and it's been so great. And we're going to go out to dinner and smoke cigars and all that. And the wife responded with, okay, well, that's cool. I'm standing in the kitchen prepping lunch and washing dishes at 10:30 at night while you're out there having fun. So you do your thing. And I'm like, oh shit, she set me up. She set me up. I shouldn't have told her the truth. I'm having a terrible time out here. This place sucks. Man, yeah. So I'm going to try to share that experience with as many spouses of the fire service to I don't know, try to bring awareness to our brothers and sisters on the line to be like, don't walk into the trap that I just walked into.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is. It's like everything, it's a constant struggle over your career of balancing home, balancing work, staying focused at work, not being, you know what I mean? Like fighting complacency. I mean, all of that. I mean, through my career, through 32 years, to say I haven't had a year, or a time period that I went to work and I'm like, I don't want to do anything today. Like, I just don't, that happens, right? Because life gets in the way. It's just busy. You got other stuff on your mind, and the mental health side of it, you were kind of going down that path. Like, I grew up in a world with my dad, never like, you just didn't talk about it, right? You didn't, you sucked it up and you dealt with it and calls and, you just didn't deal with it. Mental health wasn't a thing. And for me, the breaking point was I just gotten promoted. I was a new captain. I stayed on my same shift with my same house. So that was a battle in itself, right? Just trying to make sure that I was doing everything the right way. I was at our busiest station. The engine out there at that time was doing about 4,500 runs a year. So it was busy, right? And when you talk about a 48-hour shift, I think my busiest 48 was like 46 calls in 2 days, right?
Woof.
And oh, by the way, I was going through a divorce and I had 4 kids and I had a second job. And
so you were on Easy Street.
right. And so there got to be a moment where I found myself going in my office and closing the door and like just trying to get my head straight for the day, right? And that's not me, right? That's never me in the firehouse. Like the door is always open, even at that station, because like the captain's office is right off the day room, right? So the door was always open, and I was always leaning out the door, yelling at somebody, or playing music in the captain's office to jack with the guys, or doing something, right? And so fortunately, we had a peer support group that we had started through the IFF, in our department. And I called one of the guys. I'm like, dude, I got to do something here. Like, this isn't going good. And he set me up with the right person. And it was a guy that was ex-military that, was a therapist or a counselor. And we had some great conversations and kind of even got into stuff that I thought we were going to solely talk about my divorce and all that stuff. Right. And he was like, do you got PTSD? I'm like, no, what are you talking about? I'm good. And he's like, tell me about your career. And so we started talking about all of those things. And he's like, are you kidding me? You think you don't have a little bit of PTSD? I'm like, and then he started breaking it down. Like, you ever had that day where you come home from work and you just sit on the couch, crack open a beer, you turn the TV on, and you realize 30 minutes later that you have no idea what you just watched or what has been going on around you with your kids? Or am I, yeah, I've been there, and he's like, that's a mild form of it, right? And he goes, you're okay. You just need to learn how to manage those things and recognize them when they're happening and, and be honest with yourself about it. And so it was really good for me. And through my, last 15 years, like there's been times I've gone back and just, we've had things happen at work or whatever, and just sort of wipe all of that clean and get some of the things out that you need to get out. And I've really tried to, when I teach and we talk about culture and I teach in the academy and all that stuff, is just be very honest about that it's okay, right? It's okay to go talk to somebody and get rid of all that stuff. One of our guys is a peer support guy. Like him and I talk about this stuff a lot, and we've been there for each other. He talks about going to counseling for him just to wipe all the peer support stuff off, right? Like, you know what I mean? That always
He's
taking
taking
in
everybody
everybody
else's in.
else's
Yeah.
problems in, and then he's just got to go get all of that out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing okay. So, but yeah, I mean, and through our near miss too, like we learned a lot. We were not ready for that at all. We did not do a good job of taking care of our guys. One of them had a very bad PTSD. He fell out on his right shoulder. Ended up having 9 surgeries between his shoulder and his elbow. Was on light duty for like 3.5 years. Ended up having to go off on disability. But about 2 years into it, and Tim very much knows that we talk about this. He's actually is starting to go out and speak about his experience and what he's doing. But he, about 2 years in, we realized that there was a significant problem because it was always the thing that we always did. Like, hey, bro, you doing all right? You good? Like, oh yeah, man, I'm fine. I'm doing all right. And then his wife started calling us with problems and, what was going on and locking himself in his basement and having Xanax parties and by himself. And,
Yeah.
it wasn't good. Right. And so we got him out of that space, but it took us a long time because we weren't ready for it. And we didn't know what to do. We figured it out for ourselves. We didn't get a lot of support at the time from the Chiefs. And we got him to a good place. He's got a service dog now. He's working for a company called Warriors Ascent, which is a military and first responder PTSD group. And now he's going around speaking about what he went through and his struggles with PTSD, and so he's doing really good.
Yeah, great for him, man.
It took a long time to get past that. And so fast forward to, I don't know, 5 years later, my battalion chief, Aaron Burlingame, we joke about it, he got blown up by a electric company truck. An Ameren UE, one of their cargo trucks, had a gas leak in it. It had been on fire. Summer day, hot out. He had just taken his stuff off and was like walking by, and enough gasoline had leaked into one of the side compartments, and it hit its flash point. And he fortunately had bent over to look underneath the truck, and the door flew off. We found the door 65 feet away. If it had hit him in the face, it had killed him. But he got hit with the fireball as it came out, and fortunately he put his hands in front of his face, and so he's got some 3rd-degree burns on his hands and skin grafts and some other stuff. But that time, him being in the burn unit, like we immediately got a counselor into the burn unit, into the room with him, not just for him, but with his wife and his kids and all of that. Like Brody and Tyson, I think were 14 and 11, something like, or 12 and 10, something like that, about that time. And so for them to walk in and see Dad like that, like we knew they needed help just as much as he did, right? And so we've just done a much much better job, but unfortunately it took that near miss to open our eyes to a lot of different stuff and what we were doing and what we weren't doing.
Yeah, it sounds though that like most people are doing well, and a lot of people have benefited from that experience. So there are departments that just kind of sweep things under the rug, right? Like you make mistakes on the fire ground, and no one wants to address it because no one has the humility or vulnerability to speak on those things. And they're like, well, could have been worse. On to the next, But I think your department, and I think a lot of other departments, are very aware of not just the physical, but like the mental health side of things. And I'd like to see the fire service getting better at that each and every day.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was a huge, and it was going to get swept under the rug initially, right? And we were just very fortunate we had enough senior guys step up and say, no, we have to talk about this, right? And that's probably, though, Preston, when Chief Casey and I go out and teach that class, probably the biggest compliment I've ever gotten is that, like, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being honest about what happened, because so many other places wouldn't talk about it, and you guys are very honest about your mistakes. You don't hold back, and so to me, that means the most, right? And hopefully we're changing that culture across the fire service. Like you said, it's okay to talk about it.
Right.
We're going to screw up. It is what it is. Right?
And shout out to those guys from your department that I ran into at FDIC. I think they sat in through a little bit of our Q&A that we had out there at the was it Lucas Oil Stadium? We had a little Q&A session out there. That was really, you sent me a picture and I'm like, are you here?
Yeah. Nope. I just got people stalking you by
Oh
those.
yeah, man. No, I think I'm gonna do like a solo podcast just to talk about that experience because that was a lot. I'm very, very grateful of the people I got to meet in that experience.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take your time to talk about my experience at FDIC. So we are a little past an hour and a half right now, and this has been a great conversation. I know we're going to be able to build on it, you and I, over time, which is I'm really looking forward to. But for anything for the audience to like truly take away, I know they found value in our conversation so far, but like I want to give you an opportunity just to have closing thoughts, like a final message to the audience.
Yeah. I don't know. I think if there's any takeaway, right, is that you have to stay the course and stay through the grind, right? Like finding balance in your life with the fire service and everything else that we're doing, but also finding a way to stay focused at work and understanding that it's okay to have bad days, right? It's okay to fail some days at being good at this job or whatever it is, and then finding your focus again to drive back through it. Probably one of the, another one of those compliments that you get that mean the most to you, right? Is I had a captain on my ship. Like, I hope that at 30 years, I still have the same focus you do to grind it out every day to do the right thing, right? And not just, through training or whatever, but just doing the right thing for the guys and being there for the people at the right time and answering the phone when they call, and you know what I mean? And no matter when it is. And it just finding a way to stay through it and being relentless through it, it gets hard, right? And so just, yeah. I think
So
that's
I will add to that about the phone call thing. I think that is so important, and a lot of people when we tell each other like, hey, when you go home from shift, like don't answer your phone, don't check your emails, just like focus on your family. Like that's great. But there was a time where I got a phone call from a coworker, and I looked at it, and I was on a walk with my girls, and I'm like, yeah, I'll call them later. You know what I mean? And I shot him a text like, hey man, I'm in dad mode, man. I'll touch back with you later. And then I started thinking, I'm like, oh shit, like, does he need me right now? Does that person need me right now? And so I called him back immediately. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to blow you off. I am on a walk with the girls, but like, what's going on? Is everything okay? And he said, yeah, I'm okay. I'm just having a hard time, and I just wanted to talk to somebody about something. And who knows what would happen if I didn't call that person back? Like
sure.
worst case scenario, I would have never spoken with
Yeah.
that individual again. And I asked my wife just to walk my daughter back, and I hung out in the park, and I just talked to that person about what was on their mind. But you hit the nail on the head. Like, answer the phone call when they call you. Cannot stress that enough.
I actually just had that happen to me too. Same thing, right? Like I was playing golf, and one of the guys called, or he texted me and was like, "Hey, you busy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm playing golf. Like, what's up?" And he's like, "Just call me later." And no more than I had just gotten done, like he was calling me, and I'm like, oh, so I kind of walked away. Same thing, and it was, hey man, I'm not doing good right now, right? And I'm glad I picked up the phone, right? Because I could have easily, I was, we were in the clubhouse having a beer, right? And I could have easily just been like, nope, I'm good. And it turned into a hour long conversation. And my buddy that I was there with, he's like, hey man, I gotta go. I'm like, yeah, see you, whatever.
Yeah.
And he needed that time on the phone, and we got him on. It was actually significant. We got him on the right path, and he's doing much better a month later, right? But
Nice. Yeah.
yeah. It like you said, it's a little scary when you don't pick up the phone. You just never know, right? It's a little scary to think about what could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm not beautiful, but like amazing way to close out the podcast, just to give that final message to those individuals. And I appreciate you sharing everything that you have on the podcast. Thank you so much for your final thoughts. We can keep going on, but I know truckies have a short attention span, so we'll have to bring you in for another episode. But for everybody out there, that'll be a wrap for episode 51. Thank you so much, everybody, for your followership. Thank you for coming up to me at FDIC and shaking my hand. And like I said, look for another episode on us addressing that. Chip, thank you so much, sir. Everybody else, tune in for the next episode. We'll see you later.